Hello, my name is Yelito, and this is ODCLT. Editing.
What's your ethnicity, and how does it show up in your sound?
So I am Argentine, Italian, and my mother is French. And how that shows up in my sound is recently, this past year, I have been doing a lot of Latin music and getting back to my roots and really focusing on that.
Notice that, yeah.
Yeah, really recently.
Did you grow up speaking Spanish, and how did that influence your music?
I definitely did grow up speaking Spanish. Um, I've been speaking a lot more Spanish recently than I ever did in my past life. A lot of that has to do with being around Latinas, but yeah, we'll just say that.
When did you realize music wasn't just a hobby?
Man, I realized music wasn't just a hobby probably when I got my first 20,000 streams, but that was on an English song and I didn't even promote it. I realized that I really had potential. And that was around the time that we met.
Was it Big Body Bands?
Yeah, it was Big Body Benz. I
Yeah.
realized it was much more than a hobby.
Speaking of that time period, what do True Vision and I Love You what do True Vision and I Love You emo boy eras represent? And what does Yelito represent now?
So True Vision was my first artist name. Kind of like I really just wanted to tell people, what I saw because a lot of people tell me that I have a vision for music. I have a vision for creativity and the things that I do. Um, as far as music and as far as video directing go. But I would also say that the I Love You emo boy era is that's more of my, of course, it's gonna be very basic to say, but that's more of my emo aesthetic when I was making sort of that Juice World, XXX Tentacion type of music, very sad, very alternative. Um, and then recently, I realized that I kind of need to go back to who I am because I grew up in a Spanish household. I was around, Latin food. I was around Latin markets. Me and my family, we owned a tienda. Like I was always around all of that, listening to reggaeton, salsa, bachata, all of that. So I realized that, man, that's what I need to be making because it resonated with me a
You
whole
found
lot.
you found
My sound, my
your
niche.
niche. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
Oh, what's the biggest shift in your music now to then? What's changed in
Oh
the
my
last three
gosh.
years?
In the last 3 years, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, I went from speaking one language to another, which is crazy to think about because Spanish is my second language, and that's why it's much more of a challenge for me. And that's one thing I really like to challenge myself as an artist, and I believe that other artists should. I don't think that you should just stay in one genre, that you should stay in one lane. I think that you should diversify your entire music career. Be diverse, be different.
So that leads me into my next question actually. What's the change from True Vision to Yelito? And would you say that Yelito is genreless? Is Yelito a rapper, or is Yelito just a musician, an artist?
I'll answer that first. I would say that Yelito definitely is genreless. He's a singer and he's a rapper, which I would say for True Vision. True Vision for the most part focused on that very experimental sound, you know, pushing boundaries, going into different things. I started Spanish music when I was still True Vision, and I also rapped when I was True Vision, and I also sang when I was True Vision, and I also did experimental sounds such as Travis Scott, Yee, Uzi. I dabbled in everything, but Yelito definitely is going to be focusing on Latin music. Um, but more than just Latin music, I'm definitely going to be rapping too, because I still have that talent to rap and put those English lyrics together and write a story. So, I would definitely say that he's going to be genreless, but we're going to be mainly focusing on Latin music, without a doubt.
If someone stumbled across your music or stumbled across you as an artist and didn't know anything about you, what are the first three songs they need to play to understand who Yelito is?
Oh, man.
I'm gonna go with one and tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Heavy drug use.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely a foundation to who the artist is now. That song tells a very, very big portion of my life in a very short song, a very sad portion of my life that constructed who I am and the foundation of who I am. I'll definitely give you that one. That was a very good one. Another one that I would give you is Big Body Bins.
In the past. What exactly were you in the search for when abusing those shrooms? Or just tripping?
I would say the one thing that I was in the search for is to get better, because there was a lot going on in my head. There was a lot of noise going on in my head, and that noise a lot of the time was not very kind to me. Um, and so I was kind of doing anything that I could to drown that noise out. And whenever I was on mushrooms, that noise was nice to me, and it was really beautiful, euphoric in a sense. It was kind of like, I don't recommend doing them, but it was kind of like touching the hand of God. Not a good way, though. Not a good way at all.
I've been informed that you are currently now in a permanent trip or
Yeah.
something along those lines. What does that feel like and how does it affect you day to day?
So, for anybody that has done mushrooms, um, you're you probably have had that moment where you didn't feel real and where everything felt as if it was a simulation and we lived in a matrix. So if you remember that part of your trip where like you looked at your hands and everything zoomed out and you didn't feel real, imagine that never turned off. That's what it is. And how that affects me day to day is immense, because there's times where I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, that's not me. That's why I have to do so many different genres of music. I can't stay in one lane because I cannot be redundant when I'm in this state of mind. My life cannot be redundant. I cannot live the same life for the rest of my life because it would depress me. So essentially that's what it's like, is living a new life every single day. That's the best way I would describe it.
Did psychedelics change your creativity at all?
Oh my gosh.
For better or worse?
For better. For better. Definitely for better. Music started to sound more like a symphony rather than just a small band. It sounded like an orchestra and an opera.
Like there were parts to a song instead of just noises playing at
Yes,
once.
yes, there was like definitely bigger parts to a song. There were frequencies that I didn't hear before. There was certain aspects to music that my ears could never hear, that my brain couldn't comprehend before. And that's why I say it's a blessing and a curse. It definitely helps, but it also hurts. So,
How has Fumi changed your creative process?
oh my gosh. You guys can probably hear him in the background right now, but the way that my son has changed my process is definitely being more grounded as an individual, being more grounded in my music and having more of a direction rather than just being all over the place. My son has taught me what the word meaning is, the definition of meaning, and what it means to have meaning in your life. So, the way that my son has changed my process when it comes to being a creative is realizing that I don't have a lot of time. I felt like just yesterday he was born, and now he is 3 years old. So it teaches me to be serious, to be living in the moment, to live in the moment.
What kind of father do you want to be then?
Man, that's a question I ask myself every day. So I don't want to be a strict dad, too strict of a dad because of everything that I've been through. But look, he just slammed the door. Um, huh? Yeah, I'll check on him real quick. We'll come back.
Not only are you an artist, you're also an engineer. Are you more critical of yourself as an artist or an engineer? And what do people not realize about mixing vocals?
Man, so I would say that art is art, and you're going to be your biggest critic when it comes to it. You know, certain sounds you're not going to like, but in my experience, other people really liked them. So do not critique yourself too much on your art. I would say that I'm more of a critic when it comes to mixing vocals. And the reason that I am is because back to the whole shroom thing, it's like my brain has registered with certain frequencies now. And because of that, I can't unhear certain things. So I'm really, really strict with uh, with vocals. I'm really, really strict with them. And sometimes I'll make a song, and to me it sounds horrible vocally, and the mix is off, and the master is off. Everybody else loves it. And I'm like, don't change it, don't change it. So I would definitely say that I'm a huge critic when it comes to mixing vocals. And one thing that you're gonna notice about mixing vocals, it takes years. It takes years to get good, especially if you're not going to school for it. YouTube, everybody likes to say YouTube University, and I totally get that. But everybody mixes different. Everybody does it different. You have to find the way that you do it because there's been instances in my life where people have specifically come to me for the way that I mix, even though they know I'm not a professional engineer. They just love the way my mixes sound, especially when I was working at a studio. I had a lot of people come to me because of the way I did things. And it was not traditional at all whatsoever. So, yeah, I would say I'm a big critic when it comes to mixing vocals. It pisses me off a lot.
As someone who's learned how to mix vocals somewhat through you, and someone who has, I guess, practiced their craft, being inspired by seeing you work, I can 100% agree that mixing vocals, especially when you have a really good vocal and then you play it solo and you hear the tiniest little clip
You're
mid
just like,
vocal
oh,
and you have to redo
the
the whole
whole
thing,
thing. You're just like, great, great, great. Thank you,
bro.
Lord.
But no, all right, a little throwback for you. Walk me through being a part of 314. What was it like? Do you miss it or did you outgrow
Man, when you ask me that question, it's like a light bulb went off in my head and lightning just went off in my head.
it?
And it feels really euphoric. I miss that time a lot. I miss that time a lot. I often think about it. And just all the times that I had with you, Aaron, and with Odalis, and with Meech, and with all the other artists that we had in there. Those memories are very fond to me because I feel like that was another very important building block that helped grow this foundation as an artist. It was so important. I wish that I could go back in time and relive it, you know. I mean, that was the time before I was a dad, so I wasn't as grounded. So yeah, 314 was huge. Was a big, big part of my life and a big, big part of the foundational blocks that build up who True Vision was. I love you, emo boy, and now Yelito. Um, I really do wish I could go back in time. Even if I could get 30 minutes in that dorm room, in that environment, it would be sufficient, to see Aaron, to see Meech, to see O'Dallas, to see Alex, all in the same room again. That would really warm my heart. Even if I went back with the knowledge that I have now, it would be a beautiful thing because I feel like a big part of life is not living in the moment. And again, that was before I had my son, so I didn't know how to live in the moment. I just knew how to live, and there's a big difference between the two. So if I could learn how to live in the moment while also living in that moment, I think that it would heal a really big part of me that misses that, without a doubt.
Walk me through the creation of heavy drug use. And was evil thoughts to my emotions a therapy session to you? Do you feel exposed or naked releasing music like heavy drug use?
So I'll walk you through that. So at the time, I was with my son's mother, and she was renting out a house with a few other roommates. And I was in her room, just kind of chilling, making music in there. And then sometimes it takes really long periods for me to find beats that I like. But I just heard that one and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the words were already written. I didn't write them down on a piece of paper. I didn't write them down on my phone. They were already written in here and in here specifically. And so I loaded that beat up and it felt like I did shrooms again, even though I never did after I got stuck. It felt like I consumed them again in a euphoric way. And so I started thinking about that. I started thinking about that period in my life where I was so lost. And the only thing that helped me was heavy drug use. That's it. That's the only thing that helped me, whether it be pills, whether it be mushrooms, whether it be smoking weed, you know, that's the only thing that I felt like helped me escape. And so I never spoke to anybody about that. I didn't have anybody to speak to about that. I did have somebody, and it was God, but I didn't know that I could speak about those things to God. And so that song was a therapy session. That whole entire album was a therapy session, and my microphone was the therapist, and my computer was the psychiatrist, and we all worked in unison to create that album. And I moved on from that period in my life after I made that whole entire album. And the reason that my mother is on the cover, not dissing my dad at all. I love my dad. My dad's helped me in so many ways, but specifically, my mother helped me in that time period and did not give up on me when I was going through that, because my mom understood what that was like, whether she saw friends go through it or she saw family members go through it. And I was more than just a family member to her, I was her son. And so that's another add on right there. That's why I put my mom as the album cover, holding me, because my mom's always held me close to her heart. I love you, mom.
Shout out all the moms in the world.
Facts. Shout out moms.
Um, what scares you the most about success?
That is a great question. I would say the number one thing that scares me the most about success is change. I do not necessarily want to change who Yelito is. and who Devin is just because I'm seeing a couple commas in my bank account, or I see a huge house, or I see lots of opportunities, or I see a lot of women throwing themselves at me. I want to stay the same loving, humble person if I can remain humble. And I hope that the Lord continues to make me humble and heals my soul. So I would say my biggest fear is changing for the worse and not for the better. Um, so I would say my biggest fear for success would be change, and change for the worse and not for the better. Because I don't want to be that type of person that when I see a couple commas in my bank account, or I see the big house that I have, or I see all these women trying to throw themselves at me, that I change this personality that kind of built the foundation of who I am. So I would say that change is really what scares me, and the group of people that I would try to surround myself with when I become successful, because that's a really scary thing. That's a really, really scary thing, is to realize that you're successful and that you kind of forgot about everybody. Um, I don't want to change for the worse for
Say
this
hey,
guy.
Kimi.
This is my everything. This is who helps me keep going. So I want to make sure that I have the correct environment for that child when I become successful, and that I do not change, and that I love the same people that loved me when I had nothing.
As an artist coming up in North Carolina, what's it like trying to start a career here in North Carolina? And what are some of the challenges that independent artists face here in North Carolina?
I would say that North Carolina, there's nothing wrong with North Carolina. There's nothing wrong with the cities here. There's nothing wrong with the people here. But if you're from here and you grew up here, look at me when I tell you this. You need to leave. You need to go somewhere else. You cannot be in the same place and expect the people who grew up with you to respect the things that you're doing as you grow, because they're going to look at you the same way that they looked at you 5 years ago. And that's not their fault. That's just what it's like being a human. I'm going to give you an example of that. Even the Son of God could not do miracles, or very little, in his own hometown. And it tells us why. Because people didn't believe. When people don't believe in you, it's going to be really, really hard for you to do majority of the things that you want to do as an artist. Of course, believe in yourself, but humans are social creatures in nature. You need to surround yourself with people who understand what it means to respect you, and to respect your craft, and to respect the things that you do as an artist.
Would you say that North Carolina has an identity when it comes to music? When you think of Tennessee, you think of country music. You think of New York, you think of boom bap rap. West Coast has their own sound. Does North Carolina have a music identity?
I would say that North Carolina tries to have an identity, and there's so many people here who try to make it seem like there's an identity here. In reality, I think it's such a big melting pot, and it's so hard to chase one lane and to say, oh, North Carolina for its music is known for salsa, bachata. It's known for reggaeton. It's known for rap, old school rap. It's known for hip hop. It's known for experimental hip hop. For example, look at LA. It's in California. There's all sorts of music out there. I wouldn't say that there's necessarily one identity there. Sometimes that's a good thing. In this case, it's a bad thing because people don't know what to focus on. I would say that the baby changed that a lot. You know, he helped get Charlotte specifically on the map more, North Carolina on the map more. But no, North Carolina is not, in my opinion, it is not really known for an identity when it comes to music. We're gonna pause right there because we have a crazy kid.
What does Yelito want to be remembered for?
That's a great question. I would say what Yelito wants to be remembered for is community, bringing people together, pushing boundaries, and ultimately listening to this and not this. Because do you know how many people told me, oh, don't do Spanish music. Oh, you shouldn't do it. Oh, you don't know the entire Spanish dialect. Don't listen to that. Do not listen to that. Because I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of people out there who know you have a good song, but because they can't make it or they didn't make it, something in them makes them hate you for it. And that's human nature because they get mad at themselves when they see other people doing the things that they wish that they could do. There's a lot of Spanish artists who have come up to me who have told me, oh, you should just like stick to rap. You should just stick to rap. Don't listen to that. And the reason I'm going to tell you not to listen to that is because your competition that they don't want around because they know that you're good. There's been a lot of times where I've had Spanish artists in the studio and I guided them on what they should say, what they should sound like, what pockets that they should be in, how the mix should sound, when they should upload it, all of that. You got to be very careful because there's a lot of people who are not humble who are going to see you as a threat. Do what you want to do. Do what you want to do.
What does Yelito look like 5 years from now? In a Benz?
Hopefully, 5 years from now, Yelito looks like selling out the Panthers arena, putting this city on the map even more than the baby did, than Lil Donkey did. Hopefully, 5 years from now, Yelito looks like having talks to do a Super Bowl halftime show himself. Shout out to Bad Bunny. That was beautiful, man. It was beautiful. I love that.
Qué rico es ser latino.
Yeah, que rico, que rico. I loved it.
Last question. Finish the sentence for me. Music is the only thing that.
Keeps me alive.
Now, if you just want to do a quick outro, same way you did the intro.
Again, this is Yelito with ODCLT. And I just want to let you know that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to try to distract you and tell you where to be in your life. I want to remind you, I want to remind you that's another human. They don't know what they're doing with their lives. They're going to fake it. They're going to act like they know. And then they're going to put on a persona and portray a certain image. Be yourself. Make the music you want to make. Do the things that you want to do. And as long as you're not hurting anybody or violating anybody's personal space, do what you want to do. I'm really in my base.